Session is sponsored by RM Source. RM Source assists organizations with digital transformation by helping them navigate the challenges of innovative disruptions. For more than 2 decades, their technical and leadership teams have provided cloud, IT infrastructure, software development, and cybersecurity solutions to the enterprise, SMB, government, and education sectors. Their certified global teams are available 24/7 to install, configure, and support best-in-breed technologies such as Checkpoint Software and Microsoft. Stop by the RM Source booth today to learn how they can help you and your team on your digital transformation journey, and be sure to enter to win a TrueView HD webcam. Thank you for coming and enjoy the session.
Thank you. All right, so we got 2:15. We'll just make a mention of it. Anybody that does want to cam up, you're more than welcome to before we get started. We can put it in gallery view, and I think we'll start off by welcoming everybody to the session. And let's go through, since we're gonna have multiple people camming up, if Mark and Scott, if you wanna say hello, and then we'll introduce the other strike team members.
Mark?
Yes, Mark Seelenbacher with Henderson County. I'm one of the strike team leaders. Yeah, over to you, Scott.
I am Scott Clark. I'm the IT director for the town of Fuquay-Varina, and I'm a strike team leader.
And Adam and Rob, I think, because I don't think Amy's on, I want to introduce yourselves as well.
And Ted, don't forget Ted.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see Ted.
Ted's there.
Oh, Ted's over. Oh, my screen's covering up Ted, so I'm sorry, Ted.
So, Adam first.
Hey, my name's Adam Oates. I'm with the town of Wake Forest, and I'm just a strike team member.
Yeah.
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 A little bit more than that, but go ahead.
Yeah.
And Amy. So yeah. So Rob, you want
finally Amy joins us. Rob, go ahead.
Rob Hudson, IT infrastructure manager for the city of Greenville, and I've been a victim.
Ted.
Hey guys, Ted Norris with Onslow County, and I'm on the strike team. I do whatever Mark, Scott, and Randy say, or try to as much as I can.
And Amy.
Hi guys, I am Amy Walker. I'm the K-12 rep, or I'm the liaison. That's about my only duty.
No, you do way more than that, Amy. You keep us on point.
That is correct.
Which is highly needed. And let's see, I was just scrolling through the list, see if we've got anybody else. All right. Well, we do have a presentation. Shannon Tufts is also on the strike team with us, so she's going to come to you via. There's Blanca. Blanca's on strike team. Hey, Blanca.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Blanca from Lenore County.
All right. Well, Scott, do you want to start the presentation, and we'll go through that? That way we can have an interactive discussion.
Sure, I guess I will. Anyway, we've got a short presentation prepared by Shannon Tufts, so we can kind of go over what we've learned, the good, bad, and ugly through our responses. There's been over 180 attacks on NC counties, K-12s, state governments since 2013. 10 reported ransomware attacks in 2019. And as of October 1st, we've had over 20 confirmed ransomware events in NC governmental entities.
Hey, Scott, do you mind? Is everybody seeing Scott's screen?
Does everybody see it?
Excellent. Yep.
Do you see it, Randy?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay. So I think that is no. But anyway, so that's a long-winded way of saying business for us has been good, unfortunately, for people that have been the victims of ransomware. We've since seen some very I guess, interesting or scary trends with not only ransomware, but also data exfil. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, of course, the common attack vectors we've all heard, phishing emails, brute force passwords, RDP is a big one. The VPN exploits, that's actually one of the ones that we've had occur this year. And unpatched CVEs and Microsoft patches, and just outdated infrastructure. We know that a lot of municipalities are struggling for funding, and unfortunately, that makes them more vulnerable to cyber attacks. Mark, you want to take over on this one? And
No, go ahead. I'm trying to adjust my video, so go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, and
Okay.
What you got up there, Scott? I'll take it.
It's the timeline for the ransomware attack.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let me actually maximize that. That's what's going on. Yeah, so Shannon basically pulled this from some information. I may not I'll follow through, but yeah, mainly getting a phishing email, and then it's ultimately downloading some code that starts executing outbound connections. And since the ransomware is running in the user context, it's able to use different pieces. If you've ever used any of the Nearsoft tools, you can get cached credentials from that particular user's account. You can also, any servers you can connect to, if they're logged in console, there's potential exploits there. That can ultimately, the goal is to get to domain admin. And once that happens, and this actually is the ransomware side, and I know that was mentioned on like the data exfil, looks for files to encrypt on local computers. Well, what we're seeing is that there's also a timeline prior to that ransomware that looking for files, and some of it we've seen has been automated, where it's looking for any words with the name password in the document, and gathering all those up to send out. And then the ransomware is the last item to kind of close the door and put you into that state. So domain controllers in a Windows environment definitely are the high value targets. I mean, that's kind of the end goal. So when that zero login exploit came out, I would highly recommend that if you haven't patched your domain controllers for that, do so, because it's not as hard to communicate with that domain controller as you might think. So be thinking in that context with, all of the endpoints that you have that ultimately can reach those domain controllers. And then they're leaving a note, which can be either on a locked up machine that's just coming up, or it can be fully booting and coming up to a HTML page requesting a decryption key. So I think we'll all talk about number one, because this is something that it may not be in your incident response plan, and it's hard. We've seen different environments take this different ways, but we've definitely seen some really good methods. And if you suspect ransomware, and if you go through kind of your mock plans and you really know you're in an event, not just one machine's running malware or something, but a true ransomware, severing and unplugging all internet connections ASAP is a big deal, because that C2 connection, needs to be broken. And if you go into your incident response and you're still trying to figure out things, the threat actor still could be connecting back to the system, doing more data exfil. So that number one, it sounds hard, but really think about what that looks like in your environment. Yes, it takes down remote access to vendors. Yes, it takes down internet browsing for 911 and 24/7 operations. But if you're truly going through a ransomware event, you're going to have more to deal with than that just in the short term. So anybody else want to say anything to that?
And that's one of those things that you should really should be a serious action that you take, and you should prepare your management that, hey, if this is going to happen, if we are in the middle or we get infected, first thing we're going to do is take down the internet. And so just so that everyone is prepared in the event that you get compromised, that is one of the first actions that's going to take place.
Yeah. And I would also like to add, it's a good idea to go ahead and disconnect your connectivity to all your remote sites, all your inter-VLAN traffic, shut it all down until you can figure out, you get a handle of, get some help in there and get some handle on what's going on. That way you can kind of mitigate the spread. And one of the parts is do not try to stand up an environment, the whole part until you're certain that it's clean. You know, if you're standing up machines on a dirty network, you're just asking for fresh victims. A clean machine on a dirty network is just asking for it to be reinfected. So
yeah, and the big piece there, and the reason why this is important, if you think about it, like as far as the ransomware, you know, because you may look at it and say, yeah, but it's already got everything. Actually, in everything that we've seen, unless it's just running all, you know, for several hours, and you didn't get any early canaries that were letting you know that, hey, things are locking up. You know, group policy has been a big push. There's also machines that have been set up to do, you know, typically they're grabbing the IP schemes and then just running through. And so if those networks are offline, since they're typically done, you know, early hours, things like that, you're going to have a lot. And that's just more devices you don't have to go back. So especially if you can start looking at it and saying, okay, well, clearly that network was disconnected for some reason. Well, those devices haven't been touched. And so that's where the standing up clean environment, we've seen different environments that have, you know, you have multiple domain controllers and it was like, well, this domain controller is not hit. Maybe we should use it. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, you got to make sure all the syncs are broken. There's just so much to that. You just can't make any assumptions that just because it's not misbehaving that you don't have something going on. And of course, you know, you know, since you're here, I mean, you know, the strike team is definitely a call. And, you know, as that event happens, you know, we can always talk through, you know, those items and be available to assist.
One thing that I'd like to add to that is to right now know your baseline, know what your environment looks like. We've seen in responses, we've seen where Randy mentioned group policies. We've seen group policies added to your domain as part of an attack. And so if you have a good idea of what your baseline, what your environment looks like today, then you have you'll have a good idea of what's changed since the initial infection or the initial indicators of compromise are noticed.
I'll just add that, you know, we're talking about the technical side of things, but unplugging your internet and disconnecting your remote sites is also a political decision. So you need to make sure you have your, you know, your admin staff and those type of people on board with turning that stuff off, because you're gonna, you know, we've seen people get kicked back for turning off the internet and that kind of stuff. So you need to make sure you got some communication lines going upstairs or wherever your the big bosses might live.
And don't forget connectivity to other agencies. A lot of cities and municipalities and counties are interconnected. We've seen that happen where that link stays up, and then unfortunately your other people will get hit. Think about your network design, like Randy said, you know, sever all connection, uplink the buildings. You may want to have your configuration set to where you can do that very quickly, but go ahead and plan now.
Yep. Switch over to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, and the strike teams started to do some stuff with Shodan to look at the public-facing remote access ports. And this is a big one that we did see that impacts K-12. I think more just from the history, I'm sure universities are in the same boat of having large IP spaces and then just working through things over time. Municipals and counties still have it, but public-facing RDP, please, you got a whole group of people here that will talk you through other ways to connect. Whether it be through HTTPS, gateways, or other solutions. If you do have RDP, turned on and it's not, blocked to certain IP addresses, don't try and hide it with a non-standard port because the banners still come through the same way. Those are all attack vectors that it gets put into list that's harvested by Shodan, and there's the Chinese version of the same.
Let's just say do not have exposed public-facing RDP, period.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no reason to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm trying to say is because people may have it and they may internally be arguing, well, that's time and energy.
Yeah.
I think we've got a few folks on
fair
here that will
point.
talk about the time and energy that it takes to recover from that decision. So, and some of these came from CISA, some of these came from just discussions with, as Shannon was working with us, disable macros and PowerShells. You're not really going to disable PowerShell. A lot of the code execution, I mean, I know we worked with Tyler when they were doing password resets and they didn't know how to take a execution policy off. That's Tyler, not the bad actor. The bad actor actually knows how to run PowerShell, and they actually down level it all the way to PowerShell 1.0. I mean, they're not worried about the new stuff. They're making old stuff work. I mean, again, they're going for the largest target. So that's a hard one. I mean, number 5, if you had to skip any, skip number 5. Focus on, number 4. So.
Yeah, and I'll kind of take over. Don't allow the vendors to open up tunnels to your environment for remote support. If they have to get in remote, make sure you can control that. Don't have this always on connectivity. I know that was really brought to light, and a lot of people that was brought to light during the Tyler incident. But also, when a vendor says, "Hey, I need this port open," ask them, do they really need an outbound port open for this? A lot of times they just say, "Hey, we need to be able to, I need port 80 open." That means they need to be, or 443, they need to get out, need outbound traffic to be able to go out. Some vendors don't articulate or document well what ports actually need to be open. Some vendors don't even know what ports are open, need to be open on their software internally. We've run into that, right, Randy? So.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a big thing. I mean, I have a whole argument on this whole security issue anyway. But yes, the fact of not knowing inbound or outbound and what protocol you're using is the biggest reason we have such a large security ecosystem that we do. Bryce is on, I see him, he's working, we're working on doing some extreme host-based firewall lockdowns, and it really comes down to the footprint can be a lot less than what you think it is. And vendors take all the shortcuts in the world because it makes it hard for a developer when they're just getting stuff done. So and we did, we were in that mode where I was completely fine with Tyler, with Superion, Central Square, having their secure link connections. I know it's Bomgar. So, we've taken the stance and we've really gotten support from some of the departments that'll have to liaison those requests now to work with them. And again, I was looking at it from an ease of use, just let them have access. But as we can see, those are going to be the other targets. And, it's just as bad if they have, full admin access on a box that they can get to. And what we're seeing, and of course, everybody that had Tyler, we talked about it internally. There was a lot of shared passwords. Even or schemes were shared. We know Central Square had shared schemes, and Tyler still hasn't even been prepared to deal with all the password resets that we've asked for.
So, Randy and Scott and everyone else, I'm going through the chat. There's some questions that have come up. Earl asked about going through an actual remote desktop server service. Again,
I think you can protect that. You can actually put an HTTPS gateway on that.
Yeah. Having some sort of proxy in front of it should help.
What this really boiled down to is the brute forcing RDP, where, if they ran a brute force, nobody alerted and closed anything down, you just continue to brute force and you end up getting credentials that get you on a box.
Joel asked, has any jurisdiction with an eye sensor or Albert appliance been compromised?
Yes.
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 There have
Yes.
been eye sensors, and please be sure if you do have an eye sensor that you go through.
It is in blocking mode.
It is in blocking mode.
And
They
you
will
are
talk you
getting
through the whole thing.
notifications.
Yes, and you are getting notifications.
Yes.
Actually, we had, I don't know, we had a good story about an eye sensor that was put into a location that had a ransomware event, and there were some messages out there, and they had actually gone through because it was detecting some variants of malware. It was on guest wireless, but it would also help to recognize some others. So yes, there have been, there's been compromised locations that have had really good defenses, but it's all down to the weakest, one item. And since this is not all automated, there's a lot of manual process. And so going back to that one, I don't know if this will come up in these forward slides, but is all these VPN solutions that had exploits. There's like that top 5 of NetScalers and Palo Altos and Fortinets. That has been the worst thing for 2020 in remote access. I mean, that's just given everyone a straight door into what you think was protected. Scott, do you mind going back to number 7? I want to make sure we hit that one. I saw that one listed. Sorry. Don't use the same credential for domain administrators, your local administrator accounts. Compromised domain administrator credentials found to be same as cached. That's just another kind of getting into that hierarchy. And then also keep your number of domain administrator accounts within control, and don't log in as a domain.
Put them in the protected users group as well. That
you
way.
Want to talk about protected users group?
Say that again.
You want to talk a little bit about what protected users?
Yeah, my understanding is the protected users group prevents them from actually being cached. So if you put all of your domain admins, this is one of those things where do as I say, not as I do. We're working towards it, but make sure you're not sharing your administrator credentials. Have individual credentials for all your administrators. So that's just for auditing purposes. And again, put them in the protected users group so they're not cached locally. We saw one incident where the initial attack vector came in through cache credential RDP session of a domain administrator, I believe, and Randy Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, domain administrator RDP from a user workstation into a server. And so it was the credentials were cached in the user profile. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So that's one of those things that you don't want to. You want to make sure that you don't have you have your individual domain administrator credentials set up for all your domain admins, and then make sure they're in the protected user group. Kevin Taylor also mentioned LAPs for local admin accounts. That's all. It's good, easy to set up, and it's always good to use. And I just want to give another shout out to Bryce for saying that internal RDP is bad as well. So not just exposing it to your public network, but just if you can find a different solution for RDP or remote access, it's good to use it across the board. Earl has asked about the Cis Control Templates. He says that he heard the strike team is developing Cis Control Templates. We do have a working group in Workbench that has kind of been a little bit stagnant here over the last few months. We are trying to work on that, but
I can speak to that more. Yeah. Well, I will say the Cis Controls level 1. I know Chad has it in Stanley County. Like I said, he's doing a presentation now on Next Gen AV. And we have implemented CIS level 1. We're doing it server by server. And yes, you can't just turn it on. You will break things, but server by server or groupings of servers, we do have it on all of our Tyler Munis now. We have it on all of our Central Square, and level 1 if it's put in and you're working with it, you just can't just turn it on. You will break a couple services, things like that. And then of course our next goal will be level 2. And really where level 2 is the only main thing that it's going to get for us is, just like Mark mentioned, you could use protected groups to reduce cache credentials. There is an option in level 2 for how many cache credentials. And my intent is to set that to 0. Because if you can't talk to the DC, then there's probably something else going on. You don't have other connectivity. And I'll just make a comment on laps. This will probably be just a Rowan County thing, and Bryce can attest to that. You don't need laps if you don't have domain joined computers.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it at that.
Randy and his getting rid of Active Directory.
Nirvana.
Yeah, right. If only. Let's see here. And Wendell says he's using an RDS gateway with Duo in front of it. So, of course, any sort of public facing access, absolutely turn on MFA. Required.
Try and turn on MFA.
Try to turn on MFA.
Because it is not easy. I mean, you can get it on a lot of good things, but there's a lot of stuff that you're going to get frustrated with.
And there's also going to be some, back to Ted's point, possibly some political pushback on MFA.
Yeah, I saw that on the listserv. There was some discussion about MFA and then using personal devices. I know a lot of people put on personal clothes to go into the office clothed. So there's a lot of things. I mean, remembering your password. You use your own brain. You use your smartphone to call in sick. So,
but it's their personal phone, Randy.
That's right. And they're just running an app that generates a code. That's right.
A random number generator. Yes.
Yeah. Based on time-based one-time password. Yeah. So yeah. And if you do run into it, that's where you use hardware tokens, or let them print out a backup list of codes, and then they have to print them out every week. I think we hopefully can get past some of that. I think when two-factor's coming in pretty early, it's hard, and people just want to use it as an argument. This is where you just kind of work through some of the details and point out what happens if you don't. And I hope we can just get past all of that, because the other thing would be to say, do you allow them to use their personal phone to check email, or do their timesheet, or jump on the website, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's also I think Chris Wallace has it. If you're an O365 shop, for example, you can turn off MFA just for internal users, so that only people trying to access the stuff from an outside network can.
You'll need the Azure PT license to do a lot of that, but that's actually pretty cheap. So.
Yeah.
And if you're using Duo, and we've had to do this because we have had some pushback about not having phones. If that's the case, then we just do Duo and call your desk phone.
Yep.
It's kind of hard for them to argue that, and it's like, well, what if I need to work from home? It's like, we didn't buy your home.
But maybe that's.
Cyrus is on. Hey, Cyrus.
Yes, there's Cyrus.
Hey guys, how's everybody?
Howdy. Wonderful.
Cyrus is on our elite team. He's our secret weapon.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. There is also a request, Randy, that's specifically for you. They want to know how you're killing Active Directory, but they want that in a completely separate session.
Yes, you do. You want it in a completely separate session. It will not happen overnight. But I'll be more than happy.
Yeah, they don't want to. Let's not talk about it now. Let's not go down that rabbit hole with Randy Kress.
Yeah, you start with Max.
Stop. I said stop.
I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm drinking a little bit of that Kool-Aid too, so we'll have to do it.
No, who's this? Wendell, you gotta put your microphone on. You can't say stuff like that in chat and not be speaking.
So we are, That one is the whole let's get rid of AD. It kind of scares the bejesus out of me from a management standpoint, but from an IT strike team response point, please, if you can get rid of your AD, go ahead and do it.
No, well, I will say from an IT strike team standpoint, we will not abolish your AD if we respond.
No,
please understand, one of the first things that we do is rebuild domain controllers.
Yes.
So it's not like it's a big deal.
We're going to do scorched earth, and you're going to have to go work around it, work without AD from now on. Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, we implement NDS.
Yeah, at the very minimum, start know your AD. As we talked about group policy, we have seen some group policies buried in AD that actually facilitated a lot of these attacks, especially recently. It's the amount of intelligence that has gone in before the bomb gets dropped, before the encryption happens. They're in there gathering all this information. They're in brute forcing things. If something, get a simple tool like AD Audit Plus or something. We'll talk about central login and everything a little bit, I think, in the slides. But get a tool that it sits there and monitors your AD and actually pay attention to the alerts that come out. Because when user accounts are locked out frequently, or you have a high user account lockout, or a user was changed, an admin user was changed, and you didn't do it. That way you can kind of, hopefully catch something before it gets too bad. But, we joke about getting rid of Active Directory. We know it's not possible for everybody.
Not possible for anybody but Randy Kress.
I know we still have Active Directory, and to Scott's point, I want to make sure, I know we're talking about it, and just like Mark said, we're not all perfect. Bryce, what did you find this morning that we haven't ever really done, in our logging we're looking for?
Go ahead, Bryce. Mess up.
Please unmute yourself.
Yes.
Thought I could temporarily do it with spacebar. All right, so this morning I was just, and I was back to the Tyler thing. I had just made a comment the other day with a Tyler service account that we had, and it getting locked out because when we were doing everything with Tyler, we really made some good complex passwords. And they kept mistyping them, is what we thought. And this morning I was using Splunk and noticed that our PRTG monitoring we had basically a script that just runs a query on the Munis SQL server, and then as long as it gets a response back, it's good. That's what was locking it out. So it ended up being our own fault.
Nice.
But it just shows, this stuff is, it's not, you just think about it and it happens. It takes a lot of work. So you have to pick different pieces, but domain controllers are top notch, secure them, patch them, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, it comes down to trying to identify the low hanging fruit, what security acts are going to get, or actions are going to give you the most protection for the least amount of effort.
Right. So on the same thing about non-domain joined computers, but let's talk about backups, because we've seen an increasing trend in the bad actors get on your network, do all the investigation, get all the good stuff. They parse data and they're looking for all the good stuff for them, but they're actually going to go for your backups. We've seen a lot of places where they go, and if you're Windows-based backup, if you're Veeam, make sure that machine is hardened as much as possible. If it can be a non-domain joined computer or a Veeam server, do that, because that is going to be a target. That's going to be one of the first targets once they start wanting to, drop the bomb and nuke everything. But, if you can set up a backup system where it's not on the same servers, it's not on the same network, offsite, on a completely different network if you can, so it's not VPN connected. And if you have like storage repositories in Veeam, we had one location where the only thing that saved them is because they had a proprietary data store connector to Dell data domain. And that was what saved their backups. We had to rebuild the Veeam server, but the actual repository and the actual data was fine. So, look at your backup strategy, look at it hard, and see how, you can fortify that because if we're all going to draw the short straw at one point in time, No network is unhackable. So it's just how can you recover, how effectively and how efficient can you recover? Your backups are going to be some people that have saved careers and saved the IT department by having decent backups.
Yep.
So,
and that segues nicely into number 9 and number 10. Have your network diagrams up to date. And
hold on. Let's hit this. What Wendell said, so we can redeem ourselves with our Macs, or at least I can. Yeah, Veeam to data domain, very good. Bryce, have we looked at Veeam's immutable backup? Is that a feature yet? I know, or has it come out yet? I know they've been talking about it. We to that point.
I think it is out, but I do not think that we have it implemented yet.
Yeah, I mean, that might be good, but the main thing is yeah, getting it off to something, changing protocols, you know, on how it's stored, the SMB shares, things like that. So, you know, we could probably have a whole Veeam discussion about locking down Veeam. That's probably more advantageous than a non-domain joint. I mean, a non-domain environment, because you can have good Veeam servers that are not domain joined, because you just have all your credentials, but they don't need to be accessible.
Right, and the host-based firewall on that too.
Yeah, host-based firewall is perfect, and they can really be locked down, but then you still have potential. So yeah, having it on something else. We had some really good luck with that. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure.
Go ahead. I was going to mention it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy. What?
Oh, I was going to say, because I know you're looking at number 10 as well, to determine what servers have sensitive data. We both, actually, a lot of us started taking a look at that post data exfil, because it came into very long discussions about trying to determine what data set you may or may not have. And it is not an easy one. That's not one of the things that you probably have on your quick list.
So yeah, first off, having network diagrams that aren't stored on your local network. If you have something like Confluence or something like that, like we use here in Henderson, having that information readily available that is not likely to be compromised or encrypted as well, that will help on the recovery side. But knowing where your data resides on your network, what servers house what data, and what kind of data, whether it's PII, PHI, HIPAA, CGIS, so on and so forth. One of the things that we're trying to figure out is a way to quickly identify, because here lately data exfil is becoming more and more common as part of these attacks. Knowing quickly, being able to identify what data was exfiltrated and what the value of that data actually is going to be a really difficult task, and something that you would want to be able to hopefully have available as part of your remediation plan.
And I will add that 10 and then 11 are really going to go in hand, because now what we've seen is that change from data exfil and ransomware, which is a catastrophic event for you. But I could definitely see silent data exfil with, hey, just an email to your city or county manager, completely silent. Okay, I want X number of dollars. Why? Because here's a couple files that are showing that I have all your data. It wasn't a disruptive event. So it goes into the number 11 is the logging.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at Splunk, but this is we actually use Splunk. It's not cheap, but your money's got to go to different buckets and pockets, and we just didn't have the time to really reevaluate that one, and I think it's doing good. But because if you can come back, and this can be logs from servers, it can be NetFlow data. If you find out that a particular server was, making a connection out, not to C2, but to a file or peering, or peer-to-peer sharing or something like that, or and pushed 5 gig of data or 50 gig of data, knowing when that happened, and then to Mark's point, what data is on that server is going to really help you when you start bringing legal in and you're in incident response. Those are going to be the questions that they need to know. And if you can't produce a good set of data, or you can't prove the otherwise, that, hey, this was, there was no data on that server that falls in CGIS, or it's not financial or PII, then you just have to go into a mass notification. But if you can say, oh yeah, that was a server that contained public data anyway, and here's why, and we know it, that'll get you faster into that solution. Because I'm seeing some of this data exfil, because they're posting it, data breaches and threatpost.net are posting what's listed on the sites. And I saw one from a municipality recently. I'm like, that's stuff that people put on websites. So what they're using as their, hey, we got your data. It's not that. Some of it's not as scary. So they're not always getting the right servers.
And there too, when they do that, and they try and say, okay, we've got your data, we're going to release it if you don't pay us this ransom. The reality is that if you identify that they do have data that contains PII or PHI or whatever, the simple fact that they have compromised your systems, they've exfiltrated that data, or the fact that they were actually in your system, your data is already compromised. So I would think that breach notification would apply at that point. So you're not really truly gaining anything by, and this is an argument, or that is really going to be had at the state level. I think you're not really gaining anything by paying a ransom for them not to release the data, because the breach notification should probably be done anyway.
Yes, the property has still been stolen.
Exactly.
Right, and even if you pay the ransom and they said they'll give you your data back, that doesn't mean they're
still
going to give you their data.
Yeah.
It's still compromised, and they could actually have another copy of the data that they, sell it somewhere else. So
yeah, and Kevin, I'll address that one, just because I'm interested in this. It is reported. I'm glad you worded it that way. It was reported that Tyler paid the ransom. I mean, there's a good chance, given Tyler and how we've seen their response to this, and to the one question about their hosted environment, it's like, well, I mean, they're being protected with Tyler Detect. So I mean, I don't see a problem. I think we've got if we have a couple folks on here, they could probably speak really highly about Tyler Detect and all that amazing. That's just all sarcastic.
Amazing combination of old tools.
Yeah, amazing combination of just using the same scripting tools that the threat actor is using and actually making your environment more insecure. But no, the Tyler paid, it was, and I hate that it just caught on so much, because it was the one article from Bleeping Computer that said a source. And then I'm still concerned about the fact that they're showing virus totals with Tyler Tech 911. I encourage anybody to go to Google and search for Tyler Tech 911 and see the couple posts from a guy in a forum. I don't know, who uploads an encrypted text file to virus total. I mean, if you have, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you, but if you upload an encrypted file for a text file to virus total to figure out what virus it has, then, but again, if they did it, that's them. But it just, a lot of it seems, a lot of it just seems like a lot of, fanatical reporting just to get attention. So yeah, I have to say
that's something else. I'm glad that Randy mentioned that. Don't upload stuff to virus total, because you're just broadcasting to the world. If you don't have access to the malicious software, MCAP. With Cis Security, get access to that. You can upload things anonymously, or upload it and they do not share it outside of, well, who do they share it with? Nobody.
Well, it depends on if you let Mark upload it for you.
Yeah, don't let me
defaults
upload
to public. You have to check private.
Don't let me upload it. But when you upload it yourself, thanks, Randy.
No, no. I mean, it's actually pretty restricted. That's a much smaller base than virus total. But yeah, everybody on this call, and this is Zoom, can actually get an MCAP account, and that's actually using Cisco Threat Grid. It does the sandbox blow up. It's all free, and you can upload stuff there.
Yep.
Number 12, I think, is really good. I used to look at this and say, oh, it's just inundating. I mean, you get all your notifications. If the CVEs apply to software that you have, and you're going to get tons of notifications about things that don't, just delete those. But the ones that do, those CVEs were listed there for your Citrix NetScalers and your Palos and your Fortinets. Take action on them. If you're going through any of the guard assessments or the 911 assessments, there's recommendations that are coming from those based on the CVSS scores. And, I'd recommend, when you get these really high, 9.0 and higher, scores, set your time windows that you want to patch. And I'll say to that another thing, and I'll give kudos. We see it from John Matthews with NCSBI about taking down the VPNs for DCI. I'll give kudos, and I'll also say I still don't agree with the fact you have to have a VPN. But anyway, for that, but they're just patching the systems when it comes up. And I think that's the mindset we have to get into is, if you've got a CVE, if you had, 30-day patch windows, start thinking about, hey, I've got them. Let's just get it done by the end of the next business day or something like that. Because these exploits, the Citrix NetScaler that we had 3 days. And then those active exploits were out there, so really that's a big one. And that's one of those that you're getting emails, and it's just something you've got to learn to take action on. And that relates to your patch management. So, don't always worry about I think that's been the tradition. Take your 30-day patch window, just run with it. But now if you get these critical CVEs, just really look at it. And this is not just on your Windows, this is really on your infrastructure gear. Somebody want to take 13?
Yeah, so I guess I will. If you can use a product like Nessus or Tenable or OpenBAS, perform regular scans on your servers and hopefully some of your workstations so you can understand what registry changes are needed. You can also look and see if that has any PII on it, just kind of to get an idea of what your network, start with your servers first, in my opinion, and then work your way out. But also, one of the things when it comes back to the PII, where your data is stored, a lot of people's like, well, it's in our ERP system. Well, just remember, users are creatures of habit. So if they like to work with Excel, they're going to export that data, and most users save that data in their personal files. So educating the users on where to store certain bits of information, and that education of the users, I mean, we can all bang our heads on the table with that, but that's the big challenge. But there's many cases that you can point to that have been made public. Like, we don't want to be those people. So, I digressed a little bit. Perform credentials and non-credential scans, because sometimes you'll get different results with, you think you're doing a credential scan and you can, you're getting everything, but do uncredential scans also. And then ideally have a system to log where your data is going. As Randy spoke to, your bandwidth, your firewall logs, internal net flow, as much logging as you can do. And I understand budgets are concerned for everybody, but there are a lot of open source or low cost tools out there to do a lot of these things. You just got to roll up your sleeves sometimes and do it. And sometimes some of the open source tools are just as good as the enterprise tools, but I won't get on that soapbox. So, Mark,
go ahead and go on to 16.
Sandra asked a question about methods using for file sharing. I mean, really all the major players are good. It's just all about how you get your logging. Can you do data sensitivity and retention? So, you've got your Google side, with your Google Drive, you've got OneDrive, Microsoft. Rowan's using ShareFile for sending and receiving files. Some of that may change with Office 365 with their encryption. So, there's really a lot there, but that to that point, really moving your larger attachments out of that email, especially if you don't have MFA on your email and you're moving files a lot, because and this kind of summarizes some of that, because, if you have a compromised email account that may have attachments and a lot of stuff in it, you may have more data exfil than you think, and that comes into a data breach notification, even as simple as just an email account. And after looking at some Office 365 logs, those things are getting attacked all the time. We saw that in a couple places where you know, when you have a lot of accounts, it's just nonstop hits on those.
We okay to move forward, Randy?
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't think we can stress enough number 16. Most everybody here, I'm sure, has cyber liability insurance, but do you know what your insurance company is going to do if you call them up and say you've been compromised? Have this discussion with them, have that conversation, and find out exactly what their expectations of you are going to be. We have been involved with incidents where you know, we get the call, or it typically comes to the fusion center with NCEM or NCDPS. Tom gets us all on a scoping call, only to find out that their cyber insurance company has a different protocol. They want their own law firms involved. They want their own security companies involved, and it's really somewhat disheartening when you know, we get in there and we're wondering that there seems to be something hinky going on, but I won't get into that too much. With the relationship between your cyber liability insurance coverers and your law firms and those security companies. But that said, just make sure you understand what your coverage is, what a typical response from them would look like as well, and that's something that you don't want to wait to do. Do that as soon as you can, so you know, like next week, if God forbid you get hit, what are their expectations of you going to be, and what should your expectations of them going to be? Anything to add to that, guys?
Well, and also, if you don't like the direction that you learn more about your insurance policy, you don't like a direction, you don't have to renew with them. Go with someone else.
Yeah.
You're actually, you know, there is expectations from their point of how they want things done, but you are the customer. You are in the driver's seat. We could have a whole session on cyber liability insurance and the pros and cons of that. Cons being a lot more. I mean, well, the pros are the money, but we could waste a lot of time on that. So
the bigger thing that you want to make sure is that the things that you really can't handle are going to be your data breach notification, setting up a call center, doing credit monitoring. You know, those are the big pieces that you really want the services for. But yeah, to that point, you know, just if you've got a risk manager, if you're in risk pool with NCACC or NCLM, you know, just have your risk manager ask about that. Look at your policy limits. You know, if you're a $1 to $2 million policy limit, look at what it takes to move to a 5 to 10 million. It's typically not that much, at least right now. That doesn't mean it's not going to change as they start doing all these payouts. You know, and then you know, this turns into more of an assessment, and there's a lot more people going to the scoring models on that. So, but yeah, we'll leave it at that. And then go on.
One final thing, just know and understand that your cyber liability insurance company will likely be pushing for you to pay the ransom. So,
especially with data exfil, and that's where you look for guidance coming out. If you have questions, I mean, you've got School of Government to talk with, you've got DIT and the Maria Thompson with the risk office as our state risk officer, all looking at this very carefully to understand ramifications. So it's a big point. I mean, you could do a little bit of action now, and there's a lot more coming on this, but yeah, do your part and find out about your cyber liability. That's your homework. That's non-technical. Will I be able to get a copy of this? I sure hope so.
Yeah, me too. I have no idea. Are we recording it? Oh, it says it's recording. So
we might want to hurry.
So yeah, Brant. I mean,
are we running out of time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't we get at 3:15? Oh, do we get at 3:30 or 3:15?
I don't know.
Look, man, we'll just keep talking until people start leaving. How's that?
Yeah.
The thing says 3:15.
Okay. All right. So we'll move.
Go until you're done. Yeah. Okay.
Go until you're done. Thanks, Kevin. Engage users in user education for phishing messages and aggressive response to mitigate anyone who falls for phishing. Yada yada yada. Yeah, everyone's doing phish testing. I hope at some point. My biggest thing for this one is make sure that you develop a relationship with your users so that they feel comfortable notifying you as soon as an incident may happen. You don't want to play the blame game. You don't want to make them feel bad for accidentally clicking on a link or entering their credentials on a website in Russia for whatever reason, even though they should feel bad. But you don't want to make them feel bad. You want them to be comfortable notifying you in a timely manner that there's a potential breach. Anything to add, guys?
For phishing messages, I mean, we go down the route of, encouraging folks to report phishing. We've been doing that. We always give kudos when they do it. I think we're starting to see more people mix true phishing with, oh, I just got a spam and I'm reporting it. So,
yes.
But if we do get true phishing emails coming through, it's always a good time for a pat on the back. Thanks for helping us.
Thank you for your diligence, that sort of thing. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Giovanni, I want to go back to this one about why is there such a strong following behind paying the ransomware? It's the cheapest route for your cyber insurance to get out of the issue. So they want it done. They just want to pay it and move on. Pay it and move on. Because in a response, immediate remediation, threat hunting, all that takes time. You're spending a week or two doing threat hunting before you could even start thinking about remediation recovery. And they just want to be done with it. This is a big thing for you to go through, is a real pain for you to go through. But for your cyber liability insurance company, you may be the 10th one this week. So they just want to pay it and move on. That's why.
No, 10th one this week. I think it's more like 10th one in the day.
Yeah. Okay.
Do they guarantee you get your stuff back? No, you cannot guarantee you get your stuff back. They can just say, now that's what they'll tell you, is that they're very good at getting decryption keys. If you're working with decryption keys, then you have not followed one of the steps that we have told you.
Sorry, I'm being told that there is a hard stop at 3:15. So
Okay, so we have 3 minutes. Okay, create a continent of operations. What that means is, if this does happen, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to go through a lot. You're going to have a lot. So make sure you have a few people involved. Understand, realize who's really making decisions. For the incident commander, it's awesome when you go in and it's like, okay, I'm in this role. I'm doing it. Now, what we haven't seen, and this is really an EM practice, is having rotations. Everybody just works through, for 7 days straight. Then you end up taking a day off. Or sometimes people go 14 days. If you're like Rob, you figure out how to have an awesome team and everybody works for like 2 weeks nonstop. And then Rob's there to cheerlead you and keep you, so that was like one of the most amazing groups of people to work with for that event. So,
Randy, one thing I'd like to mention to this continuity of operations is go ahead and figure out a plan for payroll.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the first thing. Yeah, everybody talks about payroll. Yeah,
I mean, that's been the critical thing. We don't know what we're going to do about payroll. Go ahead and figure it out now, today. Figure out whether you're going to process last time's payroll or what you're going to do.
Yep. Okay. And Treasury, they're all looking at that. Those sanctions, actually, the cyber insurance liability people will say it's ITAR, it's limited, it's not what you think it is. They can pay a lot of people and never pay that list of those sanctions. It's all because it's Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So if there's no link back from the FBI, that's a lot of people you can pay. So they're working on it. I know we got less than a minute. Requirements to report to DIT. Yes, that is a House bill. If you are on this call, if you have a major incident, not a script kiddie issue that's giving you malware that Malwarebytes will do, you have an obligation to report to NCDIT. It's not a bad thing. It's the best thing you can do. Yep. It's you're not giving away any secrets. It's all protected. Under public records law.
And they are a wonderful resource. Just to have.
Yes, they are.
And last thing you need is a Shannon Tufts. If you don't have a Shannon Tufts, find one, get one.
Can't have
But
ours
can't-
though.
You can't have ours.
He is the only digital head I've seen at the conference. This is a virtual conference. I really didn't think that we were supposed to be real.
Oh, yeah, well.
It said virtual conference. I'm
If
assuming
anybody has any questions or whatnot, you can email the IT strike team at NCLGISA.org. We can follow up, and that's always, you can email that, and we also have a number on the NCLGISA website if you need help from us. If you're one of the unfortunate people that has the cyber incident, you can call us or call the Fusion Center. Making one call, it puts everything in play. So.
Sign up for MSISAC.
So since they're pulling the plug on us, I guess we don't have any more time for any further questions or answers. So we'll thank you all, and I hope this was informative. And we're always available if you ever have any questions or concerns or anything like that. So, like Scott said, just email us, and one of us will get back to you, or all of us.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.